Thank you, Ms Knox. It's a pleasure to see you in the chair, and obviously with it being a Home Affairs style debate, Ms Knox, it must be you must have your own reflections, and I certainly reflect that all too often it was your good self in the last Parliament who was having to defend the indefensible in terms of Home Office actions, and we'll see how the Minister reaches the same standard. Can I thank the Bank Bench Business Committee for granting this debate, and I do want to pay particular tribute to my good friend, the Right Honourable Member for East Ham, who's already chairing the DWP Select Committee, of which I sit. He's chairing that with distinction, and I do remember in his contribution this afternoon, for me, one of the political television moments of the year, which was the Right Honourable gentleman having to explain to the Prime Minister what no recourse to public funds actually means. Almost play school-like exchange where the Right Honourable gentleman had to explain to the Prime Minister what no recourse to public funds actually meant. And certainly he also explained his extraordinary exchanges with parliamentary questions to the Home Office. I have to say that was very much familiar, something that I think we all have with some of the parliamentary answers we get back, particularly that one that says, due to disproportionate cost, they can't provide the answer. I've often wondered that I should perhaps table a question to Parliament asking just how many answers are provided with the answer can't be provided due to disproportionate cost. I'm wondering if the answer will be indeed that they won't be able to provide that answer due to disproportionate cost. Mr Paisley, I see you're in the chair, and I want to start with the clear view of the SNP, which is the coronavirus does not respect borders or immigration status, and everyone in these islands, including those with no recourse to public funds, deserves help to get through this crisis without facing destitution. The SNP, as other political parties, have been clear that this cannot happen and that there must be a suspension to this policy so that we can support people through this unprecedented public health crisis. As has been alluded to, both the Home Affairs Select Committee and the Department of Work and Pensions Select Committee have called for this to be temporarily lifted. And it was incredible to see the most recent updates from the Home Office stating they had no plans to change this approach. The economic impacts of the pandemic are pushing thousands of people further into poverty and harming their employment opportunities. In April this year, we saw what can be possible when the political will was there, as thousands of vulnerable people in the UK were given support and shelter during the first wave of the pandemic. As the charity St Mungo's said at the time, people say it's not possible to end rough sleeping, but we've always maintained that it is with the right attitude and money. And yet, 6 months on, Mr Paisley, homelessness is again on the rise, with a 33% increase in the number of sleeping in London streets between April and June this year. Our other concern, Mr Paisley, is that the no recourse to public funds is a racially discriminatory policy, and we believe it should be scrapped without delay. It's more likely to affect BAME British children than white British children. It is racially discriminatory policy and only contributes to the ongoing hostile environment that we believe the government is intent on creating. Scrapping the policy would be a concrete step towards tackling inequality in these islands, particularly in light of the findings of Public Health England and Scotland's independent expert reference group of the disproportionate impact that the COVID pandemic has had on BAME communities. We come from the approach that everyone in these islands should have the right to access support that's particularly vital during this pandemic, regardless of their status. However, due to this policy, many people have been left behind due to the lack of support, leading them further to be pushed into hardship through no fault of their own. Certainly, we would come from the view, Mr Paisley, that the UK government's refusal to do the right thing and immediately lift the restrictions on those who currently have no recourse to public funds for the duration of this public crisis is appalling. And the unreasonable and heartless restriction also affects women and children fleeing domestic abuse, who have had to leave with little resources or belongings, and non-EEA nationals who lost their incomes and found themselves far from their families and homes as a result of the pandemic. Now, Mr Paisley, we received an excellent briefing from the Unity Project based in London, and I also received a similar briefing from the Unity Centre based in Govan in Glasgow. So who is affected? The impact is severe, and it's telling us that 52% did not have a bed to sleep in, a third shared a bedroom with their children, and 6% of single women have been street homelessness with their children. Now, can the condition be removed, as we have heard in the debate? Well, firstly, it can take too long. People suffer every day that they have to wait. The support given to the organisations provide people to try and get these restrictions lifted have had to wait 4 months for a decision. And many people don't know that they're actually eligible to apply for these restrictions to be lifted in the first place. It's a 20-page form and often requires hundreds of pages of evidence. And that evidence can be utility bills, it could be evidence that they have to get from an informal landlord, or a letter from an exploitative employer. So there are real problems there. The other problem, of course, is that the whole system has been can be unlawfully applicants can be unlawfully refused. In many cases, support organisations have successfully challenged the decisions of the Home Office through judicial review, and the national success rate for applicants was 62% before the pandemic. So there are very real concerns about the policy of trying to secure people to have the restriction lifted. Mr Paisley, the effects on women, children, those with disabilities, Commonwealth citizens and those who are subjected to domestic abuse is a very real concern. But of a very real concern as well is that the policy has been the whole policy has been ruled unlawful in the past. It's been the whole operation of the policy has been brought into disrepute in court cases in 2014, 19 and during lockdown in 2020. In a most recent hearing, the High Court ruled that the policy was unlawful as it did not prevent destitution, leaving the claimant, an 8-year-old boy, street homeless with his mother. The policy has since been adjusted, but continues to be subject to legal challenge, and that is a very real concern. So I have a couple of questions for the Minister. Can the Minister specifically explain how a single parent who is affected by no recourse to public funds is expected to pay rent and feed their families in these scenarios? If they test positive for COVID and have to self-isolate, if they're laid off and unable to find employment, and if they have health conditions which put them at particular risk from the virus. And can the Minister also tell us if he is launching an inquiry into the impact of the no recourse to public funds policy? According to the Government's 2012 policy statement, the policy was introduced in order to reduce burdens on the taxpayer, promote integration and tackle abuse within an immigration system that is transparent, clear, consistent and fair. And I can only say to the Minister, since I've arrived in this place since 2015, I do not regard the immigration system to be either transparent, clear, consistent or fair. So what concrete evidence can the Minister provide to show that this policy is meeting those stated objectives? We've heard, Mr Paisley, from very real-life examples. My fellow Glaswegian, the Honourable Member for Brent North, gave some horrific examples of this policy, and there are many, many more which have been covered. And I just want to close, Mr Paisley, if I can, with the Prime Minister's response to the Right Honourable Gentleman on television, and that is that people affected by the no recourse to public funds policy often pay income tax, national insurance, as well as council tax, but they face those exorbitant immigration charges which people have referred to. If they are taxpayers, Mr Paisley, then in need, they should be entitled to public funds. And I support those who believe that this policy should be scrapped. Thank you.